for all we know, all this could be on the media and put out there just to make it seem like the cops are racist.
Right.
Because I don't believe I think it's people that are racist, not a system.
Right.
You can't generalize people. Not everyone's the same.
And it's time for the latest Change My Mind. In the previous installment, we had an interaction with a man who began yelling racist over our conversation.
Yes, he called me a racist.
He just walked up to you and called you a racist?
Yes, he called me a racist.
Predictable victim, gonna predictable victim. If you missed that video, click the card above or the link in the description to watch. But let's compare that interaction with the one that I experienced with this strapping young lad, Zack. Man, I like the dude. Now, let me ask you this, before we start on anything else. That's a very tight do, like the fade. Mm-hmm. Now, this is one thing I will say in bridging the cult. White people get their haircut like maybe every 5-6 weeks. But you can't make a haircut like that work unless you do it. How often do you have to do it?
So I get every other Friday. My dad schedules it like after I'm done getting my haircut. He's like, the next Friday after the next, 6:30. Always scheduled. My dad likes to keep everything scheduled. I usually
get military man?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's ex-military now, but I get the bald fade. That way, when it grows back, at least it still looks faded throughout. And then I'm just trying to grow it, higher out.
Okay. Yeah, because I get sometimes people call it the Jew fro, but I get it grows out.
Yeah.
You can see a little bit of a wave. This is after putting a hat on it to mat it down. As it grows out, it curls.
Yeah.
So I look like one of those those little old time kids with the curls, licking a lollipop in a sailor outfit, like
Pennywise.
Yes, exactly. So I just asked because it's very nice. Now, did you do it last Friday? Oh, sorry. Do you mind? Can you put that on silent if we do?
Oh, my one.
No problem. Go ahead. Here, I'll take away my microphone.
It actually went. My dad's probably gonna be mad, but hey, this is worth it.
All right. So it sounds to me like you might be familiar with the Change My Mind a little bit.
Yeah.
As far as what it is, it's not really a debate. It's rationalizing a position. Today we did talk about COVID, but right now we are talking particularly because of the riots right now and because of all this going on, demands that are being laid out in the public and Black Lives Matter in the public eye. I do not believe that today in 2020 the United States is a racist country. Certainly not systemically. And if you disagree, I'm more than willing to have you change my mind.
No, I agree with you. I feel like racism really comes down to people's ignorance, not really understanding or knowing someone else with a different culture or background. And most people I've met in Texas, I've seen more racist people when I used to live in the Northeast,
I did in New York. I saw so many racists. You'd see cab drivers yelling the N-word.
I don't know, if you're still, close with Joe Rogan. I've seen some, fight, well, not, fight, but,
Him and black guys?
No, just, something that he says, honest conflict is better than dishonest harmony. And I feel like people are just going to be people that I'd rather you be authentic with yourself. And if you don't like me because of my race, just let me be truthful. Don't lie, because, some people, be nice. And then when you truly get to know them, Yeah.
I think, too, we were just talking about the hair thing. And I was just talking with a man, his name was Kendall. And he was a young black man. And he said that he felt like there were these preconceived notions, these expectations of what it is to be a black man, he said, and that was hard to live up to. And he said that, we're all athletic, and he said, he wasn't really that way. He was seemed more like of a book smart kind of guy. And I think that's a good example of something where I don't think that I have that as a white person. And so we don't need to be colorblind. And I go, man, well, that sounds pretty hard. People expect you to act a certain way because you're black. And he said, yeah, and you don't know that. And I said, okay.
Like to tell it, hey, yo, what's up, man? How you doing?
Right, exactly, that kind of thing. He was a very nice, articulate man. And so I think there are differences, and learning about that is it means I can be ignorant. For example, you get your haircut. I don't know any white guy gets his haircut every other week. I just learned something.
Yeah, I think we should take pride in getting to having that experience to be able to learn from others. I feel like a person should always want to be expand their mind, and there's nothing wrong with that. You want to know for yourself, not because you were trying to be condescending or demeaning in any way.
Right. Can I ask you this? Your dad was you said former military man, so a strict guy. What is his view right now on the riots and the Black Lives Matter and the law enforcement?
We do not speak that much about this issue. My brother, he protests. He doesn't believe in the rioting and looting. I don't think any of our family members do, but I don't think America's systemically racist. But it's if you were to look at the amount of black men per 1,000 and white men per 1,000, because I believe the Caucasian race 3 times triples the black people, correct? Or is that
black,
is that wrong?
Depending on the number, make up between 10 and 15% of the United States population. Yeah.
But still, the same amount of blacks are being killed as whites, even though there are more white people than black people.
That's something we've talked about quite a bit, and actually it's significantly less. but you can't just base it on percentages. So
yeah, because I don't want to be a number myself, you know. Or
right. But even more, there are numbers that I think that are more relevant in that scenario. So, for example, last year there were 9 unarmed black men shot by police officers. Okay, white guys there were 19. Now, if you were to look at those numbers and just say, well, that's not nearly as much more as there are white people in the country, well, you also have to take into account interactions with officers based on violent crimes. And I'm sure this isn't a surprise necessarily to you, but the number was, do you know how much more likely a black male, specifically a black male under the age of 30, is to commit homicide than a white male?
I do not.
It's over 35 times more likely. 50% of all homicides in the country are committed by black males. Now, a lot of that is gang violence. As you know, that happens in neighborhoods, and they don't have that so much even in poor white neighborhoods. They don't really have the same gang-on-gang violence, so it's not necessarily just, you know, black-on-white crime or white-on-black crime. And they also commit 60% of armed robberies.
And I mean, for all we know, it's like, I feel like there's always, like, secrets have secrets, and there's always agendas. Like, for all we know, all this could be on the media and put out there just to make it seem like the cops are racist.
Right.
Because I don't believe I think it's people that are racist, not a system. You can't generalize people. Not everyone's the same.
And I think, yes, and I think that we need the reform to come from that place of understanding. For example, police reform. Defund the police? No. Here is my proposed solution, though, at least some steps that I hope we could find some common ground. At least strip some of the power away from police unions that protect bad police officers. And I think we need better training for police officers, specifically in unarmed combat. So, for example, right now, you go in, you do a couple of physical things, and you don't necessarily have to stay up on your tests. And so think about it, you get into a violent conflict with a man, your only option is to go to your tool belt.
Yeah,
so
because... Like my
dad can't fight.
Yeah, my dad was speaking about it. Like a lot of ex-military become cops. You're trained to kill in the military, not to suppress. You know, to protect and serve. I feel like this is somewhat long gone. It's muddled. You know, I don't think they're necessarily protecting themselves before they're protecting citizens.
Right, but in some cases they are.
Yeah.
You know, in some
cases,
like
I said, I'm not trying to generalize. I believe they have the best interests. You know.
Yeah, like did you see the Atlanta shooting? You saw what happened there, and did you see the full tape?
Like about the guy, he beat up officers, threw him on the ground.
2 of them. He spiked one off. So here's a good question, because he spiked one officer on his head, right? Now the officer reached, he grabbed his wrist.
Yeah.
That's something if ever
anyone... No, COVID.
Yeah. We already shake hands.
Yeah.
If anyone has ever done a month in jiu-jitsu or judo or some kind of grappling art, right away they would learn how to control that. You would learn more in a month than most cops do in their entire life.
Jeff about this. Yeah, so the training, I feel like, because like I saw a video, it's like it takes more time to become a barber than it does to become an officer with a gun. Yeah. You know, I just think they should be taught to lower, lethal force. If you're here to protect us, don't, don't kill us, like just like, even if it hurts us, like to detain us, I mean, we are, our biggest enemy, I believe.
I think everybody, especially when you have a rap, did you know about the rap sheet from Rayshard Brooks?
No.
Well, see, that's something, so, you probably had to look for the full tape. And this is something I'm curious about listen, I'm asking you because you are a black man, because that went out and now people are saying it's another public execution and a lynching. CNN, and I've watched them for hours and hours and hours every day, have never run the full tape. They've only run the long shot, grainy footage where he's shot. They've never run the full tape. This guy didn't just have a rap sheet. This guy committed theft. This guy committed cruelty to children and false imprisonment. And he had multiple. In other words, this was a guy who was going to go away for likely a long time on this arrests. So it was presented as though he was drunk, he pulled into a parking space in Wendy's, right, to try and sleep it off. No, this is a guy who likely wasn't just drunk, but he was so inebriated he fell asleep in the drive-through line, failed a sobriety test, and when they tried to simply handcuff him, beat the hell out of two officers, stole a gun.
Be responsible for their own doing.
And they didn't even shoot him they only shot him when he turned back and aimed their taser at him. Now I understand that's a non-lethal weapon, but why do cops have it? To incapacitate. So if you incapacitate a cop with his taser, now congratulations, you just won the deadly weapon lottery, And so to me, when I watched that,
I wasn't even mad after watching it.
Really?
I
wish it didn't happen, but I don't think the guy's a racist.
A life was taken.
Right.
I don't agree with that.
Sure.
I feel like I have Christian principles myself, and I don't believe in taking a life. But at that point in the world that we live in, you had to be asking for that,
right?
Because people get shot for much less.
Right. White people get shot for much less.
Yeah.
I put it this way: is it unfortunate? Sure. Do I think that officer had any malice? No, and I certainly don't see any evidence right now that he did that because he was a racist.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been around people, white people that are nicer and more friendly to me than black people, right?
Yeah.
And then even in school, people say, "Why do you talk or act or dress so white?" I'm like, "What's wrong with speaking with articulation and somewhat intellect? Why be stupid and appeal to the masses?"
That was something that Kendall brought up too. I want to ask you: is that something that you feel is expected of you to speak and act a certain way from the black
I feel
community?
like it's more of what people want. People want you to put on a show every day. I mean, if I spoke like that, they wouldn't take me seriously, but they get a good laugh out of it. Like if I said, "Hey, yo, what's up, man? How you doing, blood?" It's like, what do you get out of that? Like, why speaking the slang when you know what I mean? Like when I'm speaking now, the English lexicon,
Right. Yeah, well, I don't know. I know because that's what he was talking about. That sometimes there are expectations of black men.
Yeah, and I mean, there's always roles. Like there's gender roles, race roles. Like, it goes on. Like if you're Asian, you're supposed to be smart or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I hope that's the case because my lawyer is. That's why I hired him. It was either I couldn't afford a Jew.
Yeah, but I'm on a time restraint. But can I say one last thing? So
yes,
I'm only 17, right? And like
you are a tall 17-year-old.
Right?
Good for you.
Right. I'm not really that deep into politics, and like I hate when people ask me about it because like I feel so ignorant. I don't want to speak wrongly. So it's like, how do you really get into politics so you know what you're speaking about? Because like, what source do you go to?
Yeah. Well, first off, I need to get your info because we'll probably need permission since you're underage to use your footage at all because I didn't realize for sure.
I hereby consent to being put on YouTube.
Okay, all right. Okay. That'll be good enough. And then if not, as long as your dad is cool. If we
I'm a conscious being. I know what choice I made. Oh, sorry.
All right, thank you very much. Well, I'm not really. I came into it as a stand-up comedian, right?
Mm-hmm.
I came into this as a comedian, and I was at Fox News for years. I will say this, and hopefully there'll be some developments that make this easier for people in the future. If you look at, we always have these sources so that people can reference them. Mm-hmm. But I tell you what I do. This is just my advice. I could be wrong. Assume that there is no unbiased media. So assume that you're getting some kind of a spin left or right. Mm-hmm. And so start off with that. What I do is I set bookmarks. And if I read Fox News, right away I read HuffPo. Mm-hmm. And then if I read something like Daily Caller, right away I read Slate. And I just make sure that I stack my deck right, left, so that I can see the same story covered from different angles. Mm-hmm. And then I'll go and look up the original sources and try and find the data that's actually accurate and unbiased. But I think a big mistake people do, and they did this with CNN for a long time, was go, well, MSNBC is left, sorry, my left, you're right, and Fox News is right, so CNN's down the middle. No, CNN is really far left. And I think that most news sources are biased. And
so kind of like create a Venn diagram,
yes.
One side, the other side, to find the commonalities.
Yeah, I would say start by setting 3 bookmarks both left and right, and check those. And even like you can set for example, Reddit politics might as well be the Communist Manifesto, and then find if there is a Reddit conservative.
What if you want to know about the past though, like
history?
So, people ask me like I support Trump, and I support him because my dad does, and I believe he does some good for the country. Mm-hmm. I don't hate on the guy. I don't really hate on anyone. Like I was saying, like I have Christian principles.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone's gonna have their own religion or belief or something.
By the way, that's the only way we're gonna solve this: is shared principles.
Yeah.
And a heart for each other. And
I mean, I feel
God,
like even if you don't believe in God, I mean, even the Bible's still a good guideline to live by.
Right,
don't kill, right?
Yeah.
So, I feel like people say a lot of bad things about Trump, and I'm like, I'm at a standstill. I don't know what to say because I don't know what's true or false about the guy from his past in the presidency because I wasn't keeping up with it back then.
Yeah, I would still say the same applies. Where try and find some, even if it's just books or articles that interest you. So, for example, you could right now probably search New York Times Donald Trump history, and you'll find some stuff.
Yeah.
And then you could search, and you could go read Trump's book himself because he'll be all too happy to give you his history. Take that with a grain of salt. So I would say the same thing applies because even with teachers, everyone is often trying to give you their point of view. And listen, that's what this is. I know that I have a point of view. That's why it says change my mind. It doesn't say, oh, I don't know, let's talk. Like I try to be straightforward about the fact that I do have a point of view. My problem isn't with people who have a different point of view. My problem is with people who claim to be unbiased and lie about it. So all I can say is whether it's reading history, whether it's reading current events, assume that whoever is compiling or writing it has some kind of biases, just like the Black Lives Matter movement. So they say unconscious biases. Well, how do you fix something if it's not even conscious? But assume that everyone has that and just try and balance it out. And I know it's hard, but you just have to bite off a piece at a time. So maybe
it's going to take time.
It takes time. And you're 17, you have plenty of time.
And also, like, something that changed my mind about the whole Black Lives Matter. Like, at first, like, when I saw it, I was like, no, all lives matter, right? I think, yeah, like
You stepped into that one.
yeah, right. But
Did you get some people going, no,
I'm black myself. I can say it, right?
That's true.
No, I'm
That's
joking.
right.
No,
Yeah.
but I read more into it. It's not that all lives don't matter. I think the movement was more so, as you see on the media, right, as what people see the masses,
Yeah.
black lives being taken by the system.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're saying all lives matter, but black lives need it more.
Yeah.
I feel like, why not just try to make everybody on the same level first?
Well, listen, when you have a movement that's demanding that people kneel solely because of their race, I don't think it's looking for equality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, there was a time in this country where black people had to kneel, unfortunately, and that was slavery that we ended, and I think is a great evil. And as Christians, we're called to kneel before no man. They're still in Africa, by the way. The Pygmies have to, was it the Bantu tribes? They have to kneel to other tribes. 6 million people are slaves in Africa, not to mention across Asia. The whole reason that the American flag, we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, is because it's a country that requires us to kneel for no man. And so I think people have said, well, kneeling is so symbolic. I agree. And the moment you ask someone to kneel over their whiteness, it's just as evil as asking someone to kneel over their blackness. And it tells me that it's not about equality. And this is the kind of conversation. This is what I think is productive. And like you said, the only thing that's going to heal us is shared values. And in the United States, those shared values that say you don't kneel to anybody, those are Christian fundamentalist values, as the media would call it. I just think it's Americanism.
Yeah, and it's good moral, you know,
Yeah.
it's ethical.
Well, Zach, what's your name?
Yes.
Zach, hey, thank you, man.
It's
I
great
appreciate
speaking
it.
with
Well, that was nice, but what are your thoughts on America as a racist nation? Of course, comment in the comments section below. Keep it civil. I know lots of you won't. And if you want to keep this series alive, please do consider joining Mug Club at louderwithcrowder.com/Mug Club. You get hours of content every day that is not available on YouTube, as well as access to the entire Blaze catalog. Otherwise, we will see you here on YouTube every day